This video will walk Kent Island High School seniors through the college application process. In order to be ready to proceed, please have your student Naviance account logged in so that you can follow along. To get logged into your account, you'll go to our school website, KIHS.org. Scroll to the bottom until you find the Naviance link. And then your student will use their 5-digit computer ID number and their school password to access this account. To get started, once we're logged into Naviance, we'll go through the documents that are available to seniors. So if you scroll down to the bottom of your page, you should see Document Resources. Under Document Resources, there's a tab called Class of 2019 Documents. Please click on that tab, and it will open 3 documents that are super important that we'll go through today. I will mostly be following the college application checklist, so please feel free to download that checklist and have it open on your computer. This is what I'll be going through and referring back to as we go through these steps. This checklist is super helpful though to students and families. If you follow along this checklist for all of the schools your student is applying to, you won't miss a step. So it reminds you to send your SAT scores to colleges. It tells you how to get your transcripts sent, letters of recommendation. It gives you some tips kind of to each step along the way. And really, if you printed one of these for every school you're applying to and went through all 14 steps for each school, then you could be sure that every school has what they need to review your student's application. There's hard copies of this document along with these other 2 documents in the school counseling office. So we actually have a packet for all the students in the class of 2019. It's a student guide to the college application process. We have plenty of copies in the counseling office, so please send your student in to pick one up if they don't have it already. But that packet contains these 3 documents along with a couple of others. So once you have your checklist ready to go, you've printed it out or you have it open on your computer so you can follow along, we'll start right at the top. So the first thing on the checklist is that we need to create our list of colleges that I'm applying to. This list is super important. So this list is housed right on your student's homepage on the right side. So on this list is where, let's click no thanks to this, is where your student will tell his or her school counselor the schools that they're planning on sending applications to this year. So this list could have 3 schools on it, it could have 1 school, it could have 10. However many schools your student is planning on applying to should be on this list. If they're not 100% sure the schools they're applying to, go ahead and put all the schools they're considering on this list so that we know what they're thinking. Your student school counselor can access this list from their account and actually kind of keep track of what your student is doing, check in with them, remind them that a deadline is coming. We'll pull groups of students that all have a November 1st deadline and kind of find out where they're at in the process, what do they need help with. So this list is really important. So this is pretty much step 1. You will go through this kind of add button over here on the right side, be able to type in a school that your student is planning on applying to. If you know the decision type, you can change that for the school. The decision type is when do you plan on applying. So you're applying early decision, regular decision, early action, regular decision. I explained all of those decision types in the part 1 video that was sent to all juniors and their parents at the end of their junior year. So the decision types are explained in that previous video, but that is important. The only thing I'll say about that now is that early decision, so if your student applies early decision, that's a binding agreement. That means that if they get accepted to that school, they have to attend that school. And your student could only apply to 1 school early decision. Though, 9 times out of 10, it's our recommendation to not apply early decision to any school. The reason being that if your student's accepted, they have to attend there, and the school does not guarantee financial aid. So unless you can write a check for the cost of tuition, including room and board for that school, then I would not advise you to apply early decision, because at the end of the day, you sign a contract, your student signs it, and actually your school counselor signs that contract as well, saying that we have talked about what early decision means and that you're aware that if and when you get accepted, you will attend that school no matter what. So we try to avoid early decision in most cases, and we look for the early action deadline, the priority deadline, or if they don't have those, then we go regular decision. But kind of the blanket statement is you want to apply to the earliest possible deadline that's not binding. So the earliest possible deadline for a lot of schools is their early action deadline. Some of them, Towson being one of them, calls it their priority deadline. But you want to apply to the earliest possible deadline that's not binding. when students come in and say that their college deadlines are January 1st, January 15th, February, they're telling us and you that they're applying regular decision to all of these schools. And that's not a bad thing, but they're not going to get a decision on whether they got into that college until 6 to 8 weeks sometimes after they submit that application and that decision closes. So if your student is applying to a January 15th deadline, they might not know if they got in until sometime in March, and that's pretty late. It's nice to know much earlier than that, start to figure out the financial aid piece. So we highly recommend that students do the early action, the priority, whatever the earliest possible deadline is that's not binding. The other thing is typically acceptance rates are higher during those earlier deadlines. So they have a lot of seats to fill in their class, so they're being maybe a little less selective. They're selecting lots of students. Once they get into that regular decision, they only have so many seats left to fill, so they can be pretty picky about who they select. The other benefit is many schools will roll you from early action to regular decision if they don't accept you. So it kind of gives you 2 chances to have your application reviewed. So they'll review an early action. Maybe they say, not quite there yet. We want to see their first semester grades of their senior year and see what happens with their GPA. So they'll, what they call is defer you. So they'll defer you to regular decision. So they'll ask for a few more pieces of data, an updated GPA, maybe new SAT scores, and then they'll make a decision with that regular decision group. So there's definitely benefits to applying early. So we encourage you to do that. But you'll pick your decision type right on this screen. You can update it later if you pick the wrong one. So if I submitted it with Salisbury, I'll show you how I can edit it to go back in and change it to the right deadline. But you need to add all of the colleges that you're planning on applying to or your student is planning on applying to this list. That is step 1 and is super, super important. The other thing is that all the information on this list needs to be right. So we talked about decision type and being able to pick that, and that's right here. So if your student is not applying early action on November 1st to Appalachian State, then we need to edit that. So you would click right here and click edit, and then it'll give you the option to update their college deadline and their application type. So to change the deadline, you have to change the application type. So if your student wasn't doing early action, maybe they're not going to be ready by November 1st, there's just no way for them to make that happen, then you would find the other deadline that school has. So there's no easy way, I would say, on Naviance to know for sure what the other deadlines are. You can click through and it'll say no date. That means that's not a deadline that school uses. So if you did that, then you would eventually find that this school, which is Appalachian State, only has early action and regular decision. So the deadline for regular decision for Appalachian State is February 1st. So you would change it to that if that's what your student was doing. If the early action deadline was right and they're planning on applying by November 1st, then keep it that way and go ahead and submit it. The other thing that you could update on here is, are they using the Common App, or are they doing the school's application? So this will tell you whether they have the Common App as an option. If your student's list of colleges they're applying to has multiple schools that use the Common App, then they should use the Common App. So the way to tell that is under submission type. You can see any of these are little computer screens. So any of the little computer screens that have a CA or a question mark or a CA with a line through it, I don't have any of those, but anything that has anything red in the computer screen indicates that school uses the Common App. So I could go in and edit this to go from a question mark, which means I don't know how I'm applying, I'm not sure yet, to via the Common App. And now this school will have the Common App symbol and be all set to use the Common App. These schools that have blank computer screens means that they don't use the Common App. It's either their school's direct application, so you'd have to go to Eastern University's website and do Apply Now, and they'll bring up their own application that only works for Eastern University. Or they could be on the Coalition app, which the Coalition app is kind of new. It is similar to the Common App in that it's one application that can go to multiple schools, but there's much fewer schools on that list. So the Common App goes to over 700 schools. I think the Coalition app this year is up to maybe 140 schools. Many of the schools on the Coalition app are pretty prestigious schools. They're state colleges that are tough to get into. They're Ivy Leagues. They're some of the top liberal arts schools in the country. So for the most part, you're going to find pretty competitive schools on that Coalition app. University of Maryland uses the Coalition app and only the Coalition app. So if your student is applying to University of Maryland College Park, they have to use the Coalition app. Another note I'll make about UMD College Park is the deadline for that school is November 1st. they accept 98% of their students on November 1st. So we recommend that every student that wants to apply to College Park applies by November 1st. Do not wait for their regular decision deadline in January, I believe it is, because they do not accept hardly any students at that deadline. So November 1st is the deadline for College Park, and you have to use the Coalition app. So this page will let you know, should my student make a Coalition or a Common App account? If so, they'll move forward with that. It would not tell you if the school was Coalition app, but you could look that up on their school website once you see that they don't use the Common App. So make sure you utilize that feature on here to tell you what schools use which type of application. Make sure the deadline is correct. So all your students' deadlines need to be correct. The benefit is that if we pull our list out of Naviance, we as in all the school counselors here at Kent Island pull the list out of Naviance to see who's applying to Florida State by the priority November 1 deadline, to pull them into a group and just kind of check in, how's the application going, and your student doesn't have their deadline correct or they don't have Florida State on this list, they wouldn't get the benefit of being pulled into that group to chat with their school counselor with a couple of their kids that are maybe applying to Florida State by that November 1st deadline. So please make sure the deadlines are correct in here, and make sure that the schools that are on this list are the schools your student is applying to. The other thing on here is you can do your electronic request for transcripts. So under the edit, you can request transcripts electronically, though we'll get to kind of the process for having transcripts sent, because it's not simply this electronic request. There's a piece of paper that goes along with it they have to turn in. The last thing I'll touch on here is the office materials. So this is actually where you can track whether your student's school counselor has sent their transcript and sent their letters of recommendation. So it would say submitted here if I had gone in and sent, I'm under Betty Buccaneer's account, so our fake student. If I'd gone into Betty's Naviance and sent her letter of recommendation and her transcript to Salisbury, this would say submitted next to Salisbury. So you can actually track whether your school counselor has done what you've asked them to do. So that helps in making sure that things are happening in a timely manner and getting done. The last part is you can tell us that you've applied, how you've applied, and once you know whether you've gotten in or not, you can put that in. So then you can keep track of where you've got accepted. Your school counselor can see that as well. So this page, Colleges I'm Applying To, is really, really, really important. This is a must for all students that are applying to four-year colleges. We need to have this list updated as soon as possible so that we can kind of get a handle on what our students are doing. We met with them in senior meetings and are still meeting with them in senior meetings. But this page is really where we pull a lot of data and kind of check in on our kids. So please make sure that this list is accurate and up to date for your student. So if we're going down the checklist, we've already kind of talked about the Common App, but if you see on your list of submission type multiple schools that have a CA or the question mark in the screen, then you would know that your student should create a Common App. So the Common App is a platform. If you type in the Common App, it'll come right up. I have created an account, so I'm into my account for this. But basically, you add the schools that you're applying to this list, and this is where you do those applications. So under the Common App, you can see that this is the college application for these schools. So you go through and give all of your demographic information. You do your essay, so they give you your essay prompts. You pick which essay you're going to write. You put it into this box. So this saves students a lot of time, because if they had 5 or 6 colleges on their Common App account, then they would be able to get a bunch of applications out a little bit quicker, because they're not doing 5 or 6 separate applications. They're doing one application for all of these schools. Under the My Colleges is where you will see anything specific to that school on the Common App. So for example, I have Salisbury, so I would do the Common App tab right here, and then I would come and check out what Salisbury wants specifically. So they would ask for a couple of other things that maybe aren't under this Common App tab, or they want them in a different way. So you'll know that you're submitting, or that you're getting each part done by getting green check marks on all of these boxes. So that's how you could kind of track where your student's at and that they have each tab done correctly. It won't let you go to review and submit until everything's done. So there's no review and submit button right now. It's blocked because I have not answered enough questions. I haven't completed the applications. But this is the Common App. Again, you should use it if you have multiple schools that are accepting it. It will make your life much easier. So step 3 on this checklist is about the FERPA release. So that is actually right here. So on the My Colleges, once you have schools added to your dashboard of schools you're applying to, under My Colleges, you'll see recommenders and FERPA. All this is that the Federal Education Rights and Privacy Act, or FERPA, says that schools, high schools, can't send information to a third party or to a college or university without permission from the parents and students. So you own your child's educational records, so you have to give us permission to share them with anybody else. So that's what FERPA is. So this tells me I can't do it yet because I haven't filled out the education section under the Common App. So if I go to Common App and do education, and if I completed all of this, then I would be able to do my FERPA. So you have to do that tab first, and then you can do this one. But you have to sign this, and you have to do it. I can't, and school counselors can't send anything to colleges. It'll get blocked through Naviance, actually, if this is not done. So please make sure that when you start requesting transcripts being sent, you have this done and submitted into your Common App account. The other thing that will be asked on this screen is whether you waive your right to read your letters of recommendation. We recommend that you do. So you should waive your right to review your letters of recommendation. A couple of reasons. One is that you're not allowed to read them per Kent Island High School and Queen Anne's County policy. So we do not allow students and parents to read their child's letters of recommendation. And then the other reason is that you don't want to kind of raise a red flag to colleges that you're reading your letters and screening them. That makes them wonder, is there something you're trying to hide? Is there something that you did that you don't want written about? So just in order to kind of keep it clean and not raise any red flags, you should waive your right to review your letters of recommendation. And again, you can't read them per our policy anyways. But it will ask you to check the box to say, yes, I waive my right, or no, I don't waive my right and I want to be able to read my letters. So that's in there. So you have to get that done as well in order for us to move forward in terms of writing letters and getting them sent to colleges. Okay, number 4 on the checklist that we're going through is matching your Common App account to your Naviance account. So Common App and Naviance actually have an agreement. They are not owned by the same people, but they work together. So we can link these two accounts. The benefit to that is that when I hit submit on your transcripts and letters of recommendation, it links up with your Common App account in, I guess, what I call cyberspace. And then when it all gets to the university, it is all together in one nice package. So your application through the Common App, your letters of rec, your transcript, all meets up, and then they don't have to do that by hand. They don't have to try and match all of that up at the institution or at the university. It's already done for them because you've matched these two accounts. So in order to match your accounts, you'll click Match Accounts, and then you'll be able to put in your Common App email address and your date of birth, and you'll match accounts. And then it'll say success, basically, and these two accounts will be matched so that all of your application materials meet up before it gets to the institution. If you haven't done that FERPA release over here on this page and you don't have a green check mark here, it's not going to let you match your accounts. So you have to do that before you can match your accounts. Okay, the other way that we get written permission, I guess, for sending transcripts and making sure that students and parents want us to send transcripts is through what we call kind of the gold FERPA release form. So it's a form that is in the packet that I mentioned at the beginning of this video. So the Class of 2018 Student Guide to the Application Process. There is a gold form that your student pulls off of the back of that packet. You sign it, they sign it, and that just gives us written permission that we can send your transcript. So if your student's not using the Common App, you're not going to do this FERPA release in here, so you would have to do the gold form. So we just require every student to do this gold form for us. That way we don't have to worry about it for anybody. So it's just your written permission that says that when and if your student asks us to send transcripts and letters of recommendation, that we can. So please make sure that your student does that and turns that form in. It doesn't have anything sent to colleges. It doesn't start really any process. It just gives us the written permission that we need. You can see it is kind of the gold kind of indicator at the top of the screen. So it's telling you that we need the written consent turned into the counseling office. So please make sure your student picks that up and submits it if they have not already. All right, the next thing on the list is just the reminder that you and your students submit your college application. So nothing in Naviance, nothing your school counselor does, nothing that happens in here is actually submitting a college application. You have to be in either the Common App or the school's institutional application and hit submit. It's your responsibility to submit your college application. If you don't pay the fee and get the congratulations you applied email, then you probably have not applied to that school and actually have not hit submit correctly. So please make sure that you are hitting submit submit on your college applications. That's your responsibility. All that we do from the counseling office end is send the supplemental materials that go with it. So we send the transcript, we send the letters of recommendation. We don't actually send the application. There's been confusion with that in the past, so we just want to make sure that's super clear. You submit your college applications, pay the fees, get the congratulations you applied, and then you come see us and we send all the other stuff that goes with it. The exception to that is that you also send your SAT or ACT scores. So those scores are housed in your private college board account or ACT account. We do not have access to that. We cannot and do not send SAT or ACT scores to schools. So step 7 on this list, the checklist says send your SAT and or ACT scores. So you have to go into your account and pay to have your scores sent. I think it's $12 in College Board now to send your SAT scores to a school. You have to send them. A horror story that I tell kids all the time, not to scare them, but to make them realize how important it is that they do every step, is that I had a student last year who applied to University of Maryland College Park. By November 1st, she had her application in. She had come to me. I'd sent her a transcript and her letters of recommendation, and she never went in and sent her SAT scores to University of Maryland. So in the spring, when everybody was getting their admissions decisions from UMD College Park, she did not get one. She did not get an admissions decision, and she did not understand why. So we called the school to find out why she didn't hear back from them, and they said, "We did not review your application. It was incomplete." And so we inquired further and come to find out they had everything except her SAT scores. She never sent them through College Board. They never had them. So therefore, they did not review her application. So it is so, so, so important that you make sure that you have every step of this checklist done and that you have submitted everything that college is asking for. I recommend to students and parents all the time to call the admissions office. There are people that work there full-time. It's their responsibility. So call the admissions office and say, "My name is so-and-so. I've applied to your school. I believe you should have everything for my application. Can you please confirm that you have everything you need to review in order to review my application?" And they will tell you. So please make sure that you do that. So step 7, send your SAT and or ACT scores. You have to do that. Step 8 says complete your resume on Naviance, so your student should have this up to date, but under the About Me tab on the home page, you'll see right at the top resume. So please make sure that your student's resume is up to date. Teachers can view this as well as your school counselor. So this is something that we use in order to write your letter of recommendation, among many other things, but this is one thing we look at. So please make sure that your resume is up to date so that we can refer to it if we need to. The parent brag sheet. So the parent brag sheet is another important thing that we use in order to write letters of recommendation. So again, under the About Me tab, you'll see My Surveys. And you can either click Surveys Not Started if you haven't done the parent brag sheet at all, but I know that I've played around with Betty Buccaneer's parent brag sheet, so hers is under In Progress. I thought, maybe not. Maybe it's under, let's say All Progress. Okay, so I went to All Progress, but under this drop down, if you just click All Progress, then any survey that's in here can be done. Please don't do the graduation survey yet. That does not happen until the end of your senior year, so please leave that one alone. The parent brag sheet, though, is your parents' place to write about you. What do they want their school counselor to know about you? What are important things that maybe we wouldn't know because you hadn't told us that, but they would like us to know? So please, parents, students, have your parents fill out the parent brag sheet. It's very helpful for us to get a kind of a picture of who you are in your parents' eyes, and helps us to, again, write a strong letter of recommendation that makes sure that we're really capturing who you are. Your school counselor will write a letter of recommendation for you to go along with your transcript. It's really called a written evaluation. So it's a part of the transcript, really, that we have to send. So we have to write it. We love writing them, but they're a lot of work, and they take time, so it's nice to have lots of pieces of information to help us write those letters. So this is one of them. Parents, please fill this out. Once you do, you can go ahead and hit Save and Finish, and then your student's school counselor is able to access it and see what you've written. All right, step 10, we're not going to talk about this much because we talked about this in the first video, but this is your reminder for teacher recommendations. So there's the worksheet that you fill out. You do the request in Naviance on that Colleges tab. So on the Colleges tab under Letters of Recommendation, we went over this before, but you need to submit the electronic request for Letters of Recommendation. You need to follow that up with each teacher in person with the worksheet, so please make sure that you're doing that. That hopefully had started at the end of your junior year, so now you should just be following up with teachers to make sure that they're getting their letters submitted. One thing I'll show you is on that colleges tab, under the letters of recommendation, you can actually check and see where they're at. So if you requested it, has the teacher actually submitted it? Has it been canceled? Did you cancel the request? So you can actually track and see, has your teacher uploaded that letter? So that's how you can keep track of who you need to keep following up with. But letters of recommendation, that is important, and that's a responsibility of the student to get those in and get those tracked down by the teachers. Your school counselors are not tracking down teacher recommendations, so please make sure that that's happening. Number 11 on this list is request transcripts on Naviance. So I showed you that earlier, but that's on the Colleges I'm Applying To page, so the most important page that we use in this process. And then you can see right here, no request for transcripts. Right now it's going to block me from requesting transcripts, actually, because Betty Buccaneer has not turned in her gold form that we talked about, the FERPA release form. So she can't request transcripts on here. It's not going to let her. But if she could, you'd be able to click edit, and then you would be able to request a transcript on this screen. But Betty Buccaneer cannot do that because she has not submitted her gold form. But that is important. Make sure you request it electronically on Naviance. And then number 12, the most important step probably in this whole process, is the official, final 100% way to request a transcript. The electronic request happens and is important, but that is not an official request for transcript. That's just a piece of the process. So just doing this electronic request is not enough to have a transcript or letters of recommendation sent. Your student must turn in what we call the college application transcript request form. We print it on blue paper, so we typically refer to it as the blue form. And that is the official request for letters of recommendation and transcripts to be sent to colleges. So it's actually uploaded into Naviance as well. So back in that document resources and the class of 2018 documents, you'll see the checklist that we're going through, but here's the college application transcript request form. This is what we call the blue form. So this form has to be submitted to your school counselor in order to have a transcript sent. So it's pretty straightforward. It asks you questions that we need to know in order to get our job done. So please make sure that you submit a blue form for every school that you need a transcript sent to. So if you're applying to 5 colleges, then you need to turn in 5 blue forms, or 5 of these college application transcript request forms. So please make sure that you do that. If you don't, then your transcript and letters of recommendation are not being sent. The other thing that this blue form does is it prompts your school counselor to write your letter of recommendation. So on the back of this form, you will see a couple of questions that, well, more than a couple, but basically a page of questions that we want answers to. This is another way to make sure that we're writing a letter of recommendation that is accurate and truly depicts your student. So please make sure that the first time you turn in a blue form, so that first time that you're ready for things to be sent to a college, you'd fill out the back of this form as well as the front. Your school counselor would then write their letter of recommendation for you, and then they would follow the directions that you give us on this blue form for what you need sent to the college. So how many letters of recommendation do you need sent? Which teachers do you want sent? If there's any other things that you're trying to figure out, need help with, that would be a place to note anything like that. We need to know the deadline. Please make sure the deadline on this blue form is correct. That is the deadline we will use to make sure that your stuff is sent on time. And then please, please, please don't hand this blue form to your school counselor the day before you need everything sent. So if your deadline is November 1st, we need this form a couple of weeks before November 1st. We need time to write you a strong letter of recommendation. So please make sure that you turn these blue forms in before the deadline. If the deadline is November 1st for you, the deadline is November 1st for us. Most colleges say that they need everything that's a part of the application by the deadline. So that means the application with the essay, the SAT or ACT scores, your transcript, your letters of recommendation, everything that's a part of the application is due on the deadline. So please don't bring us this form the day before the day of the deadline and expect us to be able to get it out. That's just not possible. It takes time to write a strong letter of recommendation, and so we don't get that done in a day. I can't stress that enough, that you give us this blue form with plenty of time to write your letter of recommendation. The one thing I will tell you, though, is the best case scenario is that you submit your college application and then you bring us this blue form. This blue form really should tell us, hey, I've applied. I've done everything I need to do. Now I need all the other materials to be sent. Colleges don't want to start getting random transcripts and letters of recommendation for a student that has not applied to their school. So you should hit submit on your application and then come in and turn in this blue form. You really, shouldn't walk into the school counseling office with 15 blue forms in your hands. You're not submitting 15 college applications all in one night. That just isn't how it happens. That's not realistic. That's not the way that it works. You're submitting them as you're completing them, as they're getting done. You're submitting college applications. So as you submit a college application, you should drop off a blue form. Then I know that I need to write your letter of recommendation, and I need to submit your transcript along with those letters to the school by the deadline. Once you give us one blue form and we have your letters of recommendation written, it's much easier to get everything sent out. We're not writing a letter. We're just electronically hitting submit on a bunch of stuff. So after you get that first blue form in with plenty of time for us to write a letter, it's not a big deal if you come in with a blue form a few days before a deadline at that point. Everything else is done. We have everything. Now we're just hitting submit. But that first blue form that you give your school counselor needs to give us plenty of time to write your letter of recommendation. But again, you should have the application done before I hit submit on all the supplemental materials that I'm sending. They don't want to get all my stuff with no student that's applied. That's just random pieces of paper now that are hanging out there that they have to figure out what to do with. So please, you hit submit and then I send everything else. That is the way that it should work. Best case scenario, if you get jammed up, if you can't figure something out, if you're stuck and it's going to take you longer to get your application in, then bring me a blue form so that I know I need to get it done and I'm not jammed up at the last second trying to get you a letter of recommendation out because you're not quite ready to hit submit. So the biggest thing, please communicate with your school counselor. The blue form is super, super important. We need these, but come talk to us if you're confused, if you're lost, if you're not going to hit submit early enough and give us enough time, then just come have a conversation and we'll figure it out. Okay? So that is kind of the quick version, believe it or not, of the college application process. That gets you all the way through number 12 on the checklist, which if you get through number 12 for every school you're applying to, then you are in good shape. They will have everything that they need. The last couple things on the checklist are really about financial aid and scholarships. So the packet that your student can come pick up in the school counseling office has a page about financial aid. It talks about the FAFSA and the FAFSA ID. It also tells them that on October 22nd, which is a Monday, we will hold financial aid night here at Kent Island High School. We have a representative from a financial aid office that will come. She actually runs financial aid at Chesapeake College, but financial aid at 2-year and 4-year institutions is the same. So she is going to talk about the entire financial aid process for both 2-year and 4-year schools. No matter where your student is going, in-state, out-of-state, she will talk about what you need to do and how it works. So that piece of paper with that date on it, as well as other information about scholarships and the FAFSA, are in the counseling office. So send your student in to grab that. And then the last thing I'll show you is under the colleges tab, under scholarships and money, you'll see scholarship list. So scholarship list is where we will post all of our local scholarships. So all of our local scholarships through our community partners get posted here. It will be really December, January, February when this list will be pretty long, meaning 20 or 30 scholarships on this list at one time. Right now there's not much on here. It's super early in the process. Most of our community partners are not quite ready to put out scholarships yet. So I would say check this maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks right now, but as we get into December, January, February timeframe, this list will grow on a regular basis. So I would say you need to check it more often then. We put reminders out to students on the Buck Report. We put it on social media, so please feel free to follow us on social media. We're on Facebook as KIHS School Counselors. We're on Instagram. So we put reminders out about scholarships, but this is where they actually will access them. And we'll go over this again with students once we get through the college application process. Right now, we're really focusing on getting those applications in, making that college I'm applying to list, making sure the letters are done, they know how to submit a blue form. All that kind of stuff is super important right now. The scholarships and that kind of thing, we can wait a little bit longer on to get rolling just because we got to get through these applications first. The last thing I'll show you on here is that college visits are posted to Naviance. So we have reps from colleges at Kent Island High School all of the time. So they actually sign up electronically, the reps do from these colleges, in Naviance, and then our students can see who is on our calendar. So you can see all of these schools are already signed up and on our calendar. Salisbury will be here the first week of November. York College is coming in November. What did I see? McDaniel will be here tomorrow. Well, today's October 3rd. So if you're watching this October 3rd, McDaniel will be here tomorrow, October 4th. So this gives you the rundown on where and when all of these schools are coming. So your student can click on more info and then they could actually register to visit with McDaniel College. We make them register 24 hours in advance, so the registration deadline is passed, but they could always stop into the counseling office and see us, and we can get them registered to meet with this rep. So that would just give them some face time with this rep to talk to the student and get some more information about the college, answer questions about the application, that kind of thing. So any student can utilize that, what we call our rep visit deadline. So you can see portal, so you can see register now, and they can sign up to see all of these schools. So it's growing. Reps can get in here at any point and register to come in and see us. So we encourage our students to get in here and register to see them. All right. So that is the rundown of the college application process at Kent Island High School for the class of 2019. If you have questions, if you need help, if your student's working on their essay and they need someone to edit it, our English teachers are great resources, but your school counselor is also willing to read essays and help with that. Please ask questions. If you're stuck, if you don't understand something on an application, make sure you come talk to us. They want you to follow directions. They put the directions in there for a reason. Make sure you read them. Make sure you do everything a college is asking you to do as part of the application process. And if you're stuck on it, come see us. All right. So I appreciate you following along. If you have questions, come find Miss Osborne, Miss Sheckley, Miss Paluski. Stop and see Miss Gorman. We're happy to help.